All right, so this lesson is about variables and variable expressions. So the first thing we need to know is, what is a variable? Well, a variable uh, is a letter used to represent one or more numbers. Oops. We use a variable when we don't know what the number is. Um, Variable comes from the word like to vary or varying. Like you'd say, oh, well, this varies from day to day. You would say, well, that changes from day to day. So that's kind of why we use a variable there. And so all we're going to do today is work on plugging things in for variables. So, for example, when you have a plus 4, when a equals 3, for our first example here, all you do is you replace the variable with whatever it's telling you to replace and go ahead and solve. This is called a variable expression. That is basically just any type of math problem with a variable in it. So we'll go ahead and plug in 3 for a. Whenever I plug something in for a variable, I like to put that in parentheses because I know, okay, I've just made that switch. Now I can solve. My answer is 7. Again, next one. Whoops, little typo there. When y equals 6 is what that should say. So you again plug it in. I'm going to put what I plugged in parentheses. So 6 minus 2, of course, is 4. So actually, the actual math is really not that challenging. So again, you could kind of get the idea here, plugging in. Again, I like to use parentheses when I plug things in, just to kind of highlight the fact that that's what I plugged in. And you're going to get 10 minus 4 equals 6. Feel free to pause this or rewind if I'm going too fast. So again, 15 in for P, 13 minus 15. Going to end up actually with a negative number here because you're taking a bigger number away from that smaller guy there. And you're going to get 2. So those are kind of simple addition, subtraction, variable expressions. Plug it in, put in parentheses just to highlight the fact that you just plugged it in, and kind of solve away. Evaluate is just a fancy word for solve. Now, with multiplication and division with variables, it's a little different. Anytime you have a scenario like this where they are squished together, so I'm just going to write this up top here, okay? A squished together scenario is what I'm going to call this, means multiply. So that is the simplest way when we're using variables to indicate multiply. When you have a letter squished up with a variable, it means multiply. Also, if you have a number squished up against a parentheses, anything could be inside the parentheses. It could be x, or it could be like a number. Okay, so when that is squished together, that means multiply. So when you see that from kind of here on out, I'm going to call it the squished rule. That means you should be multiplying those things. So when we're plugging in, you're going to notice I'm going to be using both of these. So when I plug in 2 here, I'm going to plug it in. I'm still going to use my parentheses. Notice they're still squished together. And of course, 8 times 2 is 16. We can also represent division with fractions. So any type of fraction scenario, fractions mean division. Kind of a messy division sign, sorry. So if you see like W over 3, what that's really saying is that fraction bar means division. So again, we're going to plug in here 27 on the top. And now what this is saying is 27 divided by 3, or 27 over 3. And you should always simplify fractions if you can. 3 can go into 27 9 times. Same thing here, except now we have something on the bottom, so I'm going to plug it in on the bottom. 100 over 5, but again, that means 100 divided by 5. So what that's really saying here is the top is always going to be like on the inside of the fraction bar, so 5 going into 100, of course, would equal 20. Same scenario here. So again, I'm going to rewrite the equation showing all my work. 10 can go into that. You get 46 times. Kind of just cross out zeros there. You get 46 over 1. Our last example here, it says use the expression G plus A to find the number of points earned by a player who scored 8 goals and 12 assists. So goals would obviously stand for G, A would stand for assists. So what do? We plug in 8 there, we plug in 12 here, and we have 8 plus 12, which would give me 20. And of course it's a story problem, so I'm going to label it points. Okay, so again, we're plugging in, we're using parentheses when we plug in, and just a little new thing here, I'm going to call it the squished rule. Anytime you have things squished together, that means multiply and only multiply. So whenever you don't see any type of operation like plus sign, minus sign, division, anytime you don't see anything, you just see things squished together, that automatically can only mean multiply. And we also need to get used to seeing a fraction bar used instead of that kind of bulky division sign.